All right. Enough of that. We want to make sure we get everybody a chance to go through their 5 minutes of lightning rounds, and we're going to start with Andy Nieto from DataMotion. Ready?
So hi everyone, my name is Andy Nieto with DataMotion. We are a secure messaging and transportation of information and technology company. So the best way to consider DataMotion is if you need to move information from point A to point B and you need it accountable, you need a way of tracking it, you need it to be auditable, and you want to be secure and compliant, that is what we do. So rather than highlight a bunch of different products and solutions, I thought I would ask a question to the audience, and that is simply, what do coordination, collaboration, and care have in common? C is good, and the answer actually starts with a C. They all require communication. You have to communicate if you're going to collaborate on care. You have to care for a patient. You actually have to interact with that patient. To collaborate, I mean, every part of the care continuum requires people to communicate. What empowers communication is when the communication becomes universal across all of the tools. How many of you who are vendors have been asked, can you interface with Epic? I love the statement that when you interface with Epic, you've interfaced with Epic. Because everyone knows Epic has multiple interface technology and multiple opportunities. And so if you boil it down and you make communication fundamental, and you take communication, you do it in a way that extends beyond individual silos of data, things like direct secure messaging and email that are universal and standardized. You get rid of vendor agnostic questions. Instead of saying, how many people do you have in your network? I'm comparing networks. Which network is better? And instead you say, a public tool for delivery of information using public standards. Now when you stop talking about network and you start talking about real value and collaboration. I'm going to actually stop there so we have some time for questions at the end.
I have one question for you right now. How do you engage and empower patients with their data, with their information?
So that's a great question. When we deal with patients, one of the questions that we really have to deal with is how do we identify a patient, and then how do we engage them? So DataMotion's identity validation service actually can grant a patient address that is compliant and interoperable with the providers as well. And then we also do so by empowering our partners. So DataMotion is actually here at this conference today with DocSnap, which has a patient-facing application. And the DocSnap application empowers the patient, empowers the family and the caregivers of a patient, and really a person, not just in episodes of illness, but actually empowering health and wellness by creating this collaborative tool that reaches out to the patients. So that's a key part of what DataMotion does, is empower our partners.
Terrific. That's great. Our next lightning round speaker is Dr. Oliver Alami with Wing MD. And ready, set, go.
Thank you. 5 minutes is very fast, so I'll keep it fast. But this is basically what led me down my path, with my daughter going through my mobile phone, just to play games, and then when she goes to the gallery, she finds all these gross pictures of body parts, wounds, really gross things, surgical incisions. That's because I'm a vascular surgeon, and there's an epidemic right now where we're using our mobile phones to document and communicate as much as everyone else out in the world. And it turns out that last year there were more digital photos taken than film ever, which is pretty remarkable. And this has been well documented that the providers prefer to use SMS and text messaging as a way to communicate and collaborate, not only because it's efficient, and this has been again documented in multiple studies. We did our own little internal study here, and sure enough, our residents admitted to not only using text messaging as a way to collaborate and communicate, but they tended to also send a lot of photos. And this is where I became really interested. I became passionate about photos and why photos. And it turns out that, photos, as we all know, are very powerful. Tell a story, and they're very quick to interpret, it turns out. We've all heard the phrase, the idiom, pictures are worth 1,000 words. And there's oftentimes very little or leaves very little room for interpretation when you look at a photo. You look at an incision, is it healed, is it infected, is it not? When you're reading the words on the right, you can interpret it in many ways, but when you actually see a picture, you're getting a lot more data. Another incredible thing is the speed of a glance, or how efficient the interpretation is. Actually, Fei-Fei Li, computer vision scientist here at Stanford, did a study where she flashed images in front of students, and literally for 107 milliseconds, and they were able to describe with pretty good detail what they saw, and it just speaks to how our eyes and brains have evolved to interpret images. So obviously the problem is everyone in this room is well aware of using your regular mobile phone to take pictures and send them as if they're on the device. They're mixed in with your personal photos. It's not secure. The workflow's not great. It's not integrated to the healthcare system or the EHR. Even in settings where today taking pictures is very is required. The workflow is very old school with a digital camera, SD card. There are mobile solutions with the EHR vendors such as Epic's Haiku, but the photos end up in what's called a media tab. They're not necessarily searchable. It's hard to add metadata. It's actually a nightmare. It doesn't follow any of the imaging standards. So really, that's the goal. Is our passion is to make turn down JPEGs, which are really what Epic is storing, into smart images for healthcare. And what does that mean? Adding body part annotations, laterality, searchable text, and also when you take the picture, you want to take it the way you do with a radiologic image, such as you want an accession number, encounter information, things like that. Also with the archiving, you want to follow ideally the DICOM format if needed, and obviously you want to have HIPAA compliant storage. You can do all kinds of very interesting things. When it comes to viewing the images, and this is another benefit of having your own system, you can have measurement tools if you have a certain marker. So there are a lot of interesting things. You can start using computer vision so that the computer can itself interpret the image and create a structured report. You could do document management, take a picture of a document, use text recognition or OCR technology to be able to search that document later. So the rich media that you get with these images is, I think there's a lot of power that we can capture, and instead of these photos being lost to the ether, which they currently are, and there are many of them, our mission is to capture them and to capture their value and integrate them so that this doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Dr. Alani, thank you very much. I have answered one of my questions, which was really about the difference between the Haiku product and what you're doing. But I had another one, which is really to kind of say, okay, this is great collaboration. Well, how are you transporting the images now? A lot of the direct implementations on the EHRs aren't really allowing for image transfer or additional attachments yet.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So we're sticking more with the imaging because we're integrating with Epic, or the other EHRs is so tough. So we're choosing to integrate with the imaging archiving solutions such as PACS systems, VNA, vendor neutral archives, which don't have as many barriers, and it's all cloud-based.
I'm sensing a good business opportunity for you. So awesome, transport. So next we have, thank you. Next we have Stuart. And I'm going to apologize. Wait, I have, hold on. You can sit. I'm sorry.
Which one is it?
So, bio, this is Stuart Jacobson. Thank you.
Can you hear me or going?
You need a mic.
Well, we focus on improving cardiovascular care. We help doctors and hospitals work together. And just, if I can take 1 minute here, 2 weeks ago I sat with the cardiac surgeons at the UC, and And the chief of one of the UCs, the chief of the cardiac surgery at that place, we were talking about how he handles readmissions, what he does to prevent readmissions. He said he asks the patient to take a picture. One of the ways is he asks the patient to take a picture of their wound and text it to him, which is a nice play off of what you were saying. So it validates your work. Anyway, we help the 26.6 million Americans improve, get better care. So let me see. Make sure this works. Okay. So healthcare, some observations on why we founded Biome. Healthcare is complicated, and in many ways, there's been huge investments, and there's been still not a lot of return for these investments, especially in the last couple of years. Is that not working now? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So can you go back? All right. Clinicians specialize, but for some reason, hospitals seem to want to buy one system for all these clinical specialties. And when we looked at this market, we saw that the cardiovascular care is critical to changing to success in healthcare transformation. Every 34 seconds, someone has a coronary event, and 25% of the deaths in the U.S. are related to cardiovascular care. Doctors want to deliver the best care, but they just aren't getting the data they need. And hospitals are compelled to deliver better care, but they're being hit with bundled payments, increasing competition, and increasing scrutiny, and they just don't have the expertise to really engage clinicians. So what we observed is that to really change behavior, to bend the curve, clinicians and hospitals need precision insight based on trusted data and management systems that help them track improvement. These systems have to engage doctors, they have to enable them to learn from their peers, and they have to be able to drive reduction in variations. At the same time, they have to attract patients with better rankings, and they have to help hospitals and doctors work together to understand the drivers of profitability, especially under value-based care. In our experience, there are, in cardiovascular alone, there are at least 6 or 7 discrete, unique businesses just in that service line alone. Although they're related, they're very different. The analytics that are required are very different, and it's just impossible to have a one-size-fits-all because it's very different in oncology. In our practice, we've been able to make measurable improvements. We've been able to reduce cardiac surgery readmissions by 60%. We've increased the number of same-day discharges for low-risk PCIs by 20%. We've lowered we've reduced direct costs, which has a major impact on contribution margin by 10%, and increased bed days by as many as 300 in some of the facilities. But most important, we've engaged clinicians and helped them change behavior. Our solution is based on a community-driven library. All of our clients participate in our library. They add their own measures. They add their own analytics. We help them use those analytics in our applications that consist of machine-driven assessments of the best opportunities, human-driven insights that help them align their teams, and process-driven management systems that help them not only achieve the gain, but also sustain it and not backslide. And we combine data from a variety of different sources. We take cost of care, clinical registries, EMRs, and imaging data to help patients understand, or help doctors and clinicians understand their performance. So that's Biome. And do you have any questions?
I have one question to start off with, and then we'll move to our other speakers. And that is, when you're looking at all the data that you're gathering and then analyzing and dishing back up to the clinicians, how are you thinking about the next step and letting those cardiologists work with the PCP as those patients are now going back and going to the PCP in a medical home model for recovery? Because it sounds like you've got the ACO, risk stratification, and clinical decision support all wrapped up for your cardiologists. That's great, but I'm just thinking about wrapping in the rest of the care team.
Just to make sure I understand, so how do we handle post-acute care?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
We handle post-acute care by aggregating the data in the post-acute setting to see what impact it has upstream. Our focus is on the hospitals and on the clinicians and what practice drives readmission. So we're very interested in knowing what the practices are in the post-acute care that drives readmission, but that's not our primary focus.
Right. We're thinking about where we're moving, ACO, kind of whole person care. So, and I think that's terrific. Great presentation. Much appreciated. So our next presentation now is, I'm going to say it right, Mark Zeblick. No?
Well done.
Proteus?
You said that at least as well as an early time. Proteus began with a conversation with cardiologists at Stanford. Maybe all of us are cardiologists at Stanford. This particular one was Randy Vagelos. Many of you know him, but he deals with class 3 and class 4 patients. And about a decade ago, he said to me some really memorable words, which was, these patients are either on the heart transplant list or they're going to be on the heart transplant list. And I've been working with them for 2 years, and I know that half of them are not taking their medicines. If you could just tell me which half it is, it would make my life so much easier, because I spend half of my 15 minutes every 6 weeks, so 6 months, just trying to determine if they actually take the medicines or not. And that actually is not a bad starting point for our solution for the problem. Our solution is we put a silicon chip inside of tablets, or we co-encapsulate a marker tablet with any medicine that you can make. And then a patient wears a patch that detects not only when the medicine is actually ingested, but also measures things like 3D accelerations, heart rate, temperature. And from that, we have a panel of physiologic metrics that we can evolve from that. And this is then presented back to the patient and to their family members and doctors in meaningful, usable form. So it's providing actual feedback to the patient. And it is fundamentally powered by you, because the chip has 2 different battery materials on it, magnesium and copper chloride, and your body is the potato of a potato battery. So your body becomes the electrolyte battery. And we communicate the information, it stays completely inside the body by modulating that battery current. That's all we do. And that sends out a number, kind of like your cell phone number, but this would be, say, a metformin number, 30 milligrams or 500 milligrams of metformin would be a certain code. And when that number is picked up, it's automatically encrypted by the patch, which sends it off to the cloud, and then it comes to our servers. And we can take this marker tablet and add to it any medicine, including things like Sovaldi, which is about $1,000 a pill. Sovaldi is used to treat hepatitis C, and we have a trial going on with this in conjunction with the city of San Francisco. Today, they typically will do 60 days worth, which is about $60,000, and because of the lack of adherence to that medication, they typically add 50% more, so it automatically becomes a $90,000 treatment. And the downside, if they don't take the medicine, is that you need a liver transplant. So the patch also measures information, and this we did a hackathon, we were talking about it, and how you present large volumes of data quickly to doctors to inform decisions. And this was one of the attempts that we had for that. And each of those rows represents a day, and the 60 days stacked up from top to bottom. The oldest day is on the top. And the color, the blue represents person laying down, red represents person standing up. And you can see the medication adherence data all the way on the right. This patient is a metronome. we were able to discover that this patient does take their medicines, goes to sleep on a regular basis, gets a regular amount of activity. They absolutely do not need our technology. Randy would have said, yes, okay, this is my patient. If the blood pressure is not under control, I'll change the medicine, adjust the dosage. It's not because they're not taking the medicine. Now, this panel is 16 psychiatric patients who could also benefit from this type of therapy. And what you can see at a glance here is that, if you recall from the previous slide, midnight was on the left, noon was in the middle, and midnight is again on the right. And so these patients, they sleep, but it's during the day. And my favorite one is in the upper left-hand corner, where they take their medicines for 7 days, and they stop, and then they're not horizontal for more than 5 minutes for a 3-day period, 72 hours. And finally, I will conclude, this is what the doctors, they can see a triage of the various patients. This is a panel, so they can now sort them of patients who are actually taking the medicine or not. And finally, the results from our recent clinical trial looking at people with high uncontrollable blood pressure, uncontrollable cholesterol, and the same for H1AC. And if you look at the bottom line in the lower left, after 12 weeks of therapy, 97% are under control for blood pressure, which is the equivalent of this is using generic medicines. This is not some novel molecule. This is using off-the-shelf medicines that are just used in a closed-loop environment. Same number of visits in the clusters. The doctors, the difference being that in one panel, the doctors were throwing darts, and in our panel, they had data with which to either bring the quantity of medicine up or bring it down. And with that, we were living with control.
Mark, that's a really great presentation, and I've been so curious about this in terms of patient acceptance. Where are you seeing the patient? Pushback from patients? Are they comfortable swallowing the sensor?
Usually when I get questions from such young people, I'm reminded that one of the most challenging things for any biodesigner is to put their mind into the shoes of the patient that needs the therapy. And so if you compare this to actual patients, what they say about it after using it, this last cluster trial, we had a Net Promoter Score calculated, which is a scale from 0 to 10. You take 9 and 10, yes, I would promote this and give it to a friend of mine who needs it. 0 to 6 is an anti-promoter, and you subtract those two. And on that score, Google, Google Play gets about a 30, Apple iTunes gets about a 30, and under this recent trial, this system had 62.
Wow, neat. Well, thank you so much. That was really interesting. And our final lightning round presenter is Scott Kim, and Scott is with a company called Neofect, and we're going to see a neat demo now. Do you want me to move Nicholas next? Okay.
Okay, hi, my name is Scott. I'm the CEO of Neofect USA, and I'll just start with my personal story. I was born with the disability called the spina bifida, and a friend of mine lost his father from stroke, and 2 other relatives from stroke. And another friend, his friend was a neuroscientist PhD. So three of us got together and founded a company called Neofect 6 years ago, and we came up with this product. So this product is called Raphael, and it's a hand rehab tool for the stroke patients, which we have 800,000 people every year in the United States only. So it's an FDA-approved device. So the main idea is to make the hand rehab for neurological patients more fun and engaging by letting them play games. So we have, you'll see here, we have more than 35 games right now, and every month we're updating the software to add 1 or 2 more new games, and then all the motions that you're making with the glove on is recognized by the device real time. So I'll just show you how it works, by the example of the Squeeze the Orange game. So she's wearing the glove, and we're starting the game, and virtually she's squeezing the orange. And then, yeah, it doesn't work. Oh, it works. So she can open up. So this is a type of activities you might find it pretty challenging if you have a stroke. And not only that, you can see the results coming out of the game, like real time, right after the game, and then it has all the range of motion activities and data like saved in the device. And not only that, we have the evaluation process, so which collects the range of motion information like real time. This is way faster, easier, and more precise compared to the conventional way that all the healthcare providers are using it. So we have more than 50 hospitals are using it worldwide, and then based in South Korea for global headquarters, and our US local headquarters is in Burlingame. So yeah, that's that. And you can see the everything is like charted out, and by just rather than saying your husband has been improving, now you can say your husband has been improving in pronation supination area by 17 degrees compared to early March, or the exact data points. So it's all about measurement and accuracy, and then more of the communication between patients and patient family and physicians and therapists. Thank you.
Scott, that's a great, fun way to encourage physical therapy. I actually went by Scott's booth and tried it out a little while ago, and the game that he let me play was Pour the Wine, which everyone who knows me, it's a good game for me. But I have a question for you. Are you selling these directly into the home? I mean, can people get this tool for home use and home therapy?
Yeah, so not only do we have the hospital customer, there's a fast-growing number of the American individual home patients are using at home. So we only charge $99 a month. That's purely for the software subscription. And then we rent out like this 11-inch tablet and one side of glove for free. So that's a free rental, includes all the customer support, and we have pretty good number of home patients in US.
Well, I think it's a great business for in-home care and physical therapy. It's hard to get people into physical therapy for families. So
Yeah.
what a great idea.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Terrific.
So we have a booth like down in the other side. So yeah, feel free to stop by and try it out. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Now our last presenter, sorry, Nicholas. Nicholas Donohue from McKinsey is going to talk, and here I'll give you the mic.
Share. This may be the only McKinsey presentation you'll see with no slides. And yes, I'm sorry, it sounds like you've had to go through it before. And that's a bit because we're announcing and launching a sort of new version of McKinsey. So I'm a partner here in Silicon Valley. I'm a physician by education. But we have kicked off over the last year what we're calling our Catalyst practice for all of the exciting, fast-growing innovation, particularly in healthcare, particularly at the intersection of software, particularly at the intersection of huge patient needs. And we love being a part of what we see at this conference, frankly. And we've adjusted our model and how we work with clients and our teams to try to be able to work with companies in different ways and at a much different size and cost. If you think there could be an interesting opportunity, we would welcome the conversation. In the last year, we've been in a bit of a slow beta rollout of this. We've worked with 30 or 40 companies and have had a ton of success with it. It's been exciting for our folks. We bring our software practice, our hospital practice, and our pharma and our med tech practice together to have that kind of 4 different heads thinking about it in the same way. I won't run you through demos, but if you think something like this could be interesting, I'll be around afterwards. I'm happy to kind of talk through it in more detail. Thank you.
Since I'm supposed to ask everyone a question, that was my role, I'll ask you one as well. So McKinsey, very well-established, long-established consulting firm, and now this Catalyst practice. So really, thinking of accelerating new and items, and particularly around healthcare and the acceleration of change, right? So, can you give us one example of like the where you think that acceleration of innovation that you can catalyze as a consultant firm is going to be best placed? Is that is that in a particular sector, cardiology or long-term care or behavioral health? Where do you see it?
Yeah, good. Neat question. One that we've been working on recently is thinking about combination therapies. So if you look at all the drugs out there, it's impossible for any one company to own all the different combinations of this plus this to get, particularly in cancer right now. There's a lot of small companies that have really innovative drugs, but they're not the backbone therapy. How do they get in on the combo? And how do they get paid for the combination? So we've been working with 3 or 4 folks to think about innovative kind of pricing and market access strategies to work both with the providers, the payers, and the big pharma, which allows them to be independent, to participate, to have adaptive trial designs, and basically have a chance to get their drugs to market, even if they're not owned by the traditional largest folks. So that's one example where I think, frankly, collaboration in new ways is going to unlock a lot of great things for patients.
Audience question time in May.
Question?
So, I apologize for picking on one panelist, but I really like the Proteus model, and I've sort of been peripherally following the company for some time, and I know that there have been some challenges in getting to market. Can you talk a little bit about the cost, the logistics of getting into the clinical workflow? What are the barriers that are keeping you from coming to market in a big way?
That's a really good question. We are commercializing now Barton up in Lake Tahoe. It's announced there's a local hospital that's not on this campus that's also treating patients that we not soon, and actually one other as well. And it's interesting. You think there's so many things that you have to integrate right, and you really try not to change the workflow as much as possible. It wants to be a tool for the doctor. And the number one concern, I would say, for most large hospital organizations that we talk to is cybersecurity. They don't want to have our system be a backdoor for someone to hack into the hospital to get access to medical records. And that's one of the reasons why we're porting our system over to Amazon.
Let me go.
So I was going to ask you about your cost, to the consumer, and how are you going to go to market?
So the way we were breaking the model for business innovation in pharmaceuticals. Today, tablets are sold by the tablet as opposed to the performance of the tablet. And so if you get hypertension medicine, you pay a very small amount for the hypertension medicine, but if it doesn't cure hypertension, you end up with stroke, which is extremely expensive for the patient and for the payers. You end up with heart failure, heart attacks, much more expensive therapies come downstream. And so we are on a system of paying for performance. We're trying to get there to be one of the very first successful models where we get paid if we control blood pressure. We get paid if we control A1C. We get paid if we control cholesterol. As opposed to paying per pill, we pay for a solution. And that's how you change the way you think about cost, because price for value, cost of goods sold is never a good business model, nor does it make any sense. And what payers are trying to do, or if you're an employer, if you're Google or something like that, you're paying for your own patient's health care, you're looking for is blood pressure under control or not. You don't really care how much the pennies, whether it's what the cost is.
Okay. This is a question for bioanalytics. So how do you address the tension between all the data that clinicians want to have against that which they might see as essential to have?
There isn't an easy answer. They're inundated with data. The clinicians are inundated with data today, and it's not relevant. most of it's not clinically actionable or relevant. I don't think there's any silver bullet other than to work with them on and show them the data that they have. The next question, and make the visualizations easy and make it accessible. One of the ways that we tried to do that was on mobile phones, but that presents a huge problem for a lot of HIPAA czars in hospitals. So if we can simplify it and make it really easy, it's not a place where you drill down, but that's one way. When you get beyond the initial data, initial presentation, the next thing that comes up is trust in the data. Not only do, in our experience, not only are hospitals, our clinicians inundated with data, but it's usually coded data, and they just don't find that coded data relevant or actionable. So they need another level of data. So it requires a 1-2 step of discussion with them, and really a leader in the institution to adopt. That there's no easy way around it. That's the reality.
This is for Proteus. Do you have anything for inhalers? Because asthma medication compliance has been a huge issue in the county ER visits. Do you have anything for the asthmatics?
We have a number of patents that are maybe even some issued that we looked at early on. We're not actively pursuing it today, but there's a lot of, we've looked at basically every kind of medicine we put into the body, whether it's inhalers or IV bags or syringes, for mistakes or for adherence, dosage corrections, things of that nature. So we've implemented all of that in prototype form, and what we've taken to market so far is the ingestible form of medicine. Over time, we think of this as a cathedral company. It takes 100 years to build a cathedral, and we've been laying foundations, and the next generation will take on the next major category. In 100 years from now, we think that digital medicines will be passé, but you will eventually tag every form of medicine that goes into the body for a lot of the kind of same reasons. The digital ingestible type is probably the hardest of those. Inhalers are much easier, IV bags are much easier, syringes are easier.
Other questions?
I love all the panelists and your products and services. They're amazing. Thank you for bringing them in here today. My question is, how is your product or service going to help the sickest patient populations that are costing us the most money and that have the least money to spend on care?
So the DataMotion platform is all about engagement and enablement. And so the way our platform is designed is to enable the provider and the patient at kind of a set unit cost rather than each person paying in a pillow. You're looking at enabling across the entire platform. Most of the actual where it touches a person or touches the care team comes in the HIT, the technology space and the individual vendors and how they've done it. But we see that the delivery of information, that baseline delivery of information, by making it ubiquitous, by taking it out of the silos, it extends the care to home. It extends it to their lives on a daily basis rather than just when they're at the access and points of care.
Anyone else on that question? Scott?
Yeah, so I think our home product basically explains answers the question. So by cutting all the costs, we're trying to serve more people whose insurance got maxed out. Once they hit the max, they can't really go to the rehab center just to resume their recovery. So by cutting the costs, we provide the same service to the home patients, And actually, like, it's really loved by the therapists, and that's like a big part of our aspiration, like to serve the people who are in need, but like need some financial assistance.
So from our perspective, the number one DRG is hospital admissions for heart failure. It's about $34,000 per admission, and the readmission rate has been about 50% for a long time. The number one reason for readmission within a certain period of time is failure to take the medicine. So by one of our current applications is for patients just being released from the hospital and to reduce the hospital readmission rate. It both is easier on the patient because each admission to the hospital is weaker than it was before. It's a downward spiral. But it also saves the system a lot of money because those admissions can add up. And under the new law, there's no reimbursement for readmission rates within a certain period of time.
Dr. Long, this is like your product as well goes across over all.
Yeah, it's kind of a telemedicine play, you know, so leveraging the power of imaging to document and communicate very quickly. So that's kind of what we're going to focus.
I don't have to go pick up my scan and then drive it across town and lose 3 hours of my work time to make sure that it's, right there.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that, right. And there are a lot of perioperative things you can do that are interesting, you know, preventing post-op infection, things like that. I'll let you speak.
One of the things that we do is try and improve the quality of care during the stay to reduce readmission. So it's not uncommon for from one of our hospitals there was an average of 2 to 3 hour order to transfer time. So people were sitting in the ICU for 3 hours after a transfer order was written by the doctor, and this is in one of the top med centers in California. It's very common. It not only costs the system enormous amounts of money, but that ICU can't be utilized. Oh, sorry. The ICU can't be, those beds aren't available for more patients. Readmissions are very expensive, but they also take up beds that could be allocated to more people, which increases access. So making the system more efficient is better for everybody. Understanding what clinical pathways are best when people enter the hospital, and making sure that they eliminate that there's unnecessary variation is eliminated, also improves throughput and quality of care to everybody, not just the rich, but everybody. The real goal of our clients is to make money on Medicare. I mean, that's really what they're trying to do. In a cabbage, they're trying to figure out how to make money on a Medicare reimbursement. Most don't. Most lose it, and they shift it to the, they rely on the wealthy payers or wealthy patients to pay for them. Our goal is to help hospitals figure out how to make money on a Medicare reimbursement. And that's good for everybody.
Are there other questions for our panel?
I have one for Nicholas. So if I have an idea, how do I approach you with them?
You can look for me outside. I'll raise my hand and I'll hang tight.
And any advice for budding entrepreneurs? Like, what would you want to see by a person?
Advice for budding entrepreneurs.
Or any initiatives that you guys are focused on. You mentioned pharmaceutical drug-drug interactions or combo.
Yeah, I think the biggest advice I could give folks on building a business is really think about the customer and what it is that they're trying to solve. I think most of the early stage companies that we've run into that have had troubles have been a little insular and focused very much on like what they're making, and lo and behold, when you actually go and bring it out there, it's not what folks want. So make sure that that is a very continual loop, and that sounds almost, pedantic, particularly simple, but it's easy to lose sight of that when you're cranking away and building something on your own.
Like a lean startup mode?